So speaking of the plunging testosterone levels of US males.
Yes. It's very weird. I actually don't have a single male friend that hasn't suffered low T.
Wow.
Recently. Yeah.
Wow.
Almost every guy that I know has had like low testosterone.
And how are they finding out about that? Are they going and getting tested?
Yeah, it's it's like a typical, blood panel that you would get from a physician at this point. Like most of my friends are now in their like mid to late 30s to early 40s.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, most of my friends have had like low testosterone, which is very interesting because mine is like pretty high.
Yeah.
But, I guess it's like a testament to just practicing what I preach.
Totally. So what do you think men can do about that then from a nutritional standpoint, from a self-care standpoint?
Yeah. Well, I think definitely integrating healthful fats into one's diet, like not doing the low fat diet, which I know decades ago was probably more in vogue, but I think a lot of people, especially people on plant-based diets, I know many people I know a few people who are on plant-based diets, but like this more fringe version where it's like almost like a fat-free version of the plant-based diet. Yeah. That is not ideal from the standpoint of hormonal health. Studies show that actually fat-free diet, like low-fat diets, are associated with lower testosterone. Also, just like low calorie diets in general. In LA, a lot of people are on like very calorie restricted diets because they just want to look better.
Yeah.
And I think there's a time and place to do like a cut. I've recently done one myself actually, but when you sustain that over the long term, that can lead to reduced testosterone as well. Because that means you're sending the signal to your body that food is scarce. So your body's not going to pump out hormones that are like, getting you amped up to procreate in a time of like food scarcity. And that's essentially the signal that you're sending your body. High sugar foods, sugary, ultra processed diets are associated with lower testosterone. There have been studies that have shown that one single high sugar bolus can drop testosterone by about 25. And that sustains for a couple of hours afterwards. I believe about 2 hours afterwards. We don't typically eat in one sitting 75 grams of sugar, which is what they used in that study. It was part of what's called an oral glucose tolerance test. But typically your average adult today consumes 75 grams of added sugar every single day. So
wow.
Yeah.
So your typical adult is consuming the same amount of sugar that tanked testosterone by 25% in a diet. Wow.
Exactly. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're eating a healthful diet. I would say not a vegan or plant-based diet. Like integrate healthful, sources of animal fat, animal protein in general. Wherever you choose to get your protein is very helpful, in so far as it helps to sustain and grow ultimately your skeletal muscle. Which can optimize testosterone levels. And by the way, testosterone is important for women too. So for any, I don't want to alienate any women who are listening. Women have testosterone and it's very important for women as well. Totally. They have about 1/10 the testosterone as men, but it plays an important role in libido, mood, well-being, body composition, all that stuff. So super, super important. And yeah, making sure that you're not chronically stressed, like all the things that are generally good for health. We know that can help support optimal sex hormone levels.
Totally. Because if you don't have optimum testosterone, you're not going to have healthy sex drive.
Yeah. I mean, testosterone, it's important. It's like the primary male sex hormone. That's like, that motivates you, if nothing else, to set goals and then ultimately work to achieve them.
Yeah.
And for most guys, those goals are procuring a mate, procuring food, various body goals, athletic performance. So yeah, testosterone is crucially important. And my testosterone was like, I did labs recently and my testosterone was like 1150, which is pretty high at the high end of the normal range. And my free testosterone was also, it was not as high as my T. Free testosterone is the active testosterone that actually can act on tissues. And I actually found that my sex hormone, so your testosterone is produced in the testes for men primarily. And sex hormone binding globulin is a compound produced in the liver that basically binds testosterone. And when it breaks free, or when the testosterone breaks free, then it's free testosterone. And that's thought to be the active testosterone. And so my sex hormone binding globulin was like slightly elevated. And so I started taking if you have low free T, you can take things like zinc. You want to do this like under the guidance of a physician, but zinc can help reduce sex hormone binding globulin and boost free T. Boron is a really cool micronutrient that has also been shown to reduce sex hormone binding globulin. So basically, like frees up your testosterone, basically.
Yeah.
And activates it, for lack of a better term. So yeah, there's like definitely a lot that you can do to optimize your T levels. Also, another big issue, I think, which might explain. I mean, our diets have become increasingly shitty over time.
Yeah.
Which might explain this decline that you've alluded to. But also, aside from like what we're actually consuming, there are, our ever increasing exposure to environmental pollutants that act like endocrine disruptors. So whether it's bisphenol A or phthalates or
even
parabens,
microplastics.
Yeah, microplastics, things like that.
Yeah.
Those also can impact the way our hormones function. They're called endocrine disruptors after all. And so for men, I think reducing your exposure to plastic, like using plastic less, washing your hands after touching store register receipts is a big one, or not touching them altogether, because those tend to be coated with BPA.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What else is like coated with BPA that you want to like cleanse yourself after? Yeah,
you definitely want to avoid most store register receipts. The primary ones are the heat sensitive ones, which you can tell they're heat sensitive if you drag your fingernail across them, you can like basically write with your fingernail. You know, so those are the ones that they're like coated with bisphenol A.
Okay.
BPA tends to be in like plastic bottles, but even plastic bottles that are labeled BPA free, they've now started to remove BPA from plastics and replace BPA with BPS or BPF. So other bisphenols that actually have like less research on them, but might act the same, if not, have an even stronger effect in the body. So you want to avoid like plastic as best as you can.
Totally. And as you're saying, this is for women as well, right? Because plastic is an endocrine disruptor.
Yeah.
And it not only messes with your estrogen, but it also messes with your testosterone, which is very important for women as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So you want to avoid that stuff like parabens. Like some online on social media might say, oh, well, the dose makes the poison and, like yada, yada, yada. But with the pernicious thing about endocrine disruptors, like the thing that's like really, tricky about them, which actually might like make that rule not apply for endocrine disruptors, is that they have what's called like low dose effect. So you might see like a really dangerous toxic effect at a certain dose, and then you might see like no effect, underneath that dose, but then in very low doses, you might see a completely different effect. So it's like so as opposed to like a linear curve, you might see more of like a U-shaped curve. And so that's the issue with endocrine disruptors that makes them really hard to study. And also like just the overall burden of our exposures today is so high, whether it's like the shitty food that we're eating, or the fact that I was just reading a statistic today that came out from the CDC that 25% of adults are completely sedentary, like zero physical activity, like a quarter of the population. So there's that. Shitty diets, they are just like the insidious exposure that we all have to these endocrine, environmental pollutants. So yeah, it's just like a lot, it's in aggregate, it's a lot for our bodies to contend with. So the more like, I guess, naturally you can live, like the better,
Right. And I think people have chalked up like, I forget who said it recently. It was, the director, maybe the director of Jurassic Park. I can't remember, who blamed testosterone for like poor behavior and was basically like we should eradicate it. I'm not sure that was it, but I'll look it up.
Interesting.
And like there was this whole like kind of thing around it of like testosterone is like, what's been wrong with the planet for like a few thousand years or whatever. And it's like when we look at men who are kind of, let's say, the examples of what low testosterone would look like, right? Like, I don't want to work out. I have very low motivation. I don't have a sex drive, right? Yeah. There's nothing about that feels like, wow, that's what we want for the future of men, that's fucking sexy.
Yeah.
What I think we're forgetting now is like men with testosterone who have done their work, who are warriors, who are thoughtful, compassionate beings, who actually it's a lot of men like that. That is the absolute sexiest. So I feel like we're forgetting like how beautiful and sexy and amazing testosterone actually is. Another dog fart.
Oh no, it hasn't wafted over this way yet, but
it was a small one this time.
Oh God.
That might have been a soundbite, an Instagram soundbite, and the dog fart ruined it.
I'm I don't have a dog, and I don't know if I would ever be able to get used to that. Like, I have a cat who, as far as I know, cats never fart.
Yeah.
Which has made me, in a way, along with other things, other aspects, a bit of a cat guy, I suppose. But I guess there's probably like
the depth of love and affection that you generate for them overcomes the horrific nature of their farts.
Horrific nature of the dog fart.
Yeah.
I suppose.
And you get used to that moment where you're like sharing with someone and like you both smell the dog fart at the same time and you both like just smell. Yeah. And it's like a moment of being like, was that you or you? And then you're like, oh, thank God it was the dog, I know.
I know. Well, I guess like if you're in a coupleship, like if you're coupled, and having a dog is a good way to like kind of like offset the blame or whatever. Like you just blame the dog. I don't know.
Except you get used to you're like the human fart is like 1/10 as bad as the dog fart. So it's like you can't really offload the human fart on the dog because it's just not bad enough to be the dog.
Human farts are different.
Yeah.
They're very different. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. But why, if you're feeding a dog, I mean, we're getting off topic, but I'm genuinely interested. If you feed a dog like a healthful diet, like they shouldn't be super gassy, right?
Yo. This dog has like one of the best lives ever. He eats pure organic human grade dog food. He also has like the most expensive freaking Sunday dog foods. Again, all the things on Instagram. Yeah. The dog eats really well. And like, he ate a skull in the forest the other day.
Jesus.
It was just, and then he found an old deer carcass that I could not get him out of. He eats like, I don't even know where he finds this stuff. So much rope. I'm like, bro, we don't even have rope just lying around the house. Where'd you even find that? He ate a soccer ball that he stole from a child in the neighborhood yesterday. Damn. So it's like, I don't know if how sometimes when people eat a bunch of salad, they get a bit gassy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's what's going on or it's the child's soccer ball or it's the random rope that he finds.
That stuff's not going to sit well. If I ate a soccer ball, I'd be in pain. But
So okay, so here's I've got like a few last questions, which is just like for men you must work with in nutrition a lot about mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for men are like, okay, I know the things to do to like build testosterone to be healthy, but I'm having a hard time doing them. Yeah. What kind of stuff do you recommend?
I think you have to like not try to bite off more than you can chew and just try to instill one habit at a time.
Yeah.
Whether it is purging your house of plastics or upgrading the meat quality in your home or getting rid of some of the ultra processed grain products or even just like making a habit of reading nutrition facts labels and reading ingredients lists to be able to identify where there's added sugar, right? Because we already talked about the role that added sugar can potentially play in this. I think you want to try to institute one habit at a time. And once that becomes a habit, then that allows you to habit stack, which is what James Clear talks about, I believe, in, Atomic Habits, which is like, you can't just like try to do everything at once. It's the reason why that whole New Year's resolution phenomena, like new year and new you, you're not going to be new you at the turn of the new year. You're going to be the same you. And if you try to take this black or white dichotomous mindset about like just revamping everything, the minute you fall off the wagon, you're going to feel like you've disappointed yourself and you're going to feel like a moral failure. It's much easier to just to do one habit at a time. For example, with my life, I've got most things optimized, but I generally wasn't like a big, I wasn't getting enough like steps in, I'm not a big cardio fan, but I think like the benefits of walking are irrefutable. Like walking is like almost magic. It's so good for you. And so I was already going to the gym. I was doing lots of resistance training. And because I already had that habit in place, it's very easy for me to go to the gym because I love it. I generally love lifting weights. I easily was able to tack on to almost every workout, at least, a 5 to 10 to 15 minute bout of walking on the treadmill. So I've essentially habit stacked this additional habit onto something that I was already doing.
Yeah.
Everybody has a morning routine.
Yeah.
Everybody has a pre-bed routine. Everybody has a pre-workout routine. Everybody has a post-workout routine. Everybody has a post-lunch routine. Like, so if you can find ways to stack these healthy things like into aspects of your day that are already kind of like scheduled, then they're going to be easier to adhere to. And adherence ultimately over the long term is really like the key metric of success, really, you know?